I never forgot the sound of my mother's voice slicing through the room. Street trash. The laughter of my siblings echoed sharp and cruel while I stood frozen, clutching the fragile hand of a lost old woman. For a moment, I wondered if they were right, if kindness was nothing but weakness. But deep inside, something whispered, this night was far from over. As their mocking eyes burned into me, I caught the faint rumble outside, engines rolling closer. They didn't notice, they didn't care. But I felt it in my bones. Something was about to change forever. The Morgan estate glittered under a canopy of lights, chandeliers strung across the garden like captured stars. Tonight was my mother's 60th birthday, and she made sure the world knew it. Cameras rolled, phones streamed, and a dozen influencers circled the marble fountains, desperate to catch a glimpse of the family that wore perfection like a crown. My brothers in their designer suits and my sister in her custom gown stood at her side, radiant under the camera flashes. I stood near the back, holding a glass of champagne I had no intention of drinking, wondering how long I could endure. The crowd applauded as my mother lifted her diamond-studded glass. "To family," she said, smiling that politician's smile she'd perfected over decades. I raised my glass out of habit, though no one turned to acknowledge me. In the live stream replay later, I knew the frame would crop me out, as if I had never been there at all. That was how it always was. Claire Morgan, the invisible daughter. A little girl tugged at her mother's sleeve near the buffet. "Why isn't that lady standing with the others?" she whispered too loudly. Her mother hushed her, but my siblings smirked. My chest burned. I stepped back until I felt the cool wall of the mansion behind me. They could play their game of appearances. I wanted no part of it. But then the music swelled, the DJ announcing another toast, and I saw my brother Adrian hand my mother a velvet box. Inside sparkled a key to a new car, the latest model she'd been wanting. Laughter, applause, the cameras flashing brighter. My mother kissed his cheek and declared, "Adrian always knows how to make me proud." My sister Sophie leaned in next, gifting her a diamond bracelet. My mother wept theatrically, as if overwhelmed by their devotion. When my turn came, I offered a small photo frame, a picture of us when I was 5, back when my father was still alive. For a fleeting second, her smile faltered. Then she laughed. "Oh, Claire, always the sentimental one. You really must learn to live in the present." The guests chuckled politely, but I saw the ridicule in their eyes. I left before dessert, slipping through the back door. No one stopped me. No one even noticed. In the kitchen corridor, the noise of celebration muffled into a hum, and I finally breathed. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass window, tears pricking my eyes. The world would watch that live stream tomorrow and marvel at the Morgans, the perfect dynasty. But no one would see me standing alone, forgotten. No one would see me crying behind the door. The night air was sharp when I stepped into the street. That was when I saw her. An old woman, frail and confused, stood at the edge of the driveway. Her clothes were plain, her hair unkempt, and her eyes darted like a child lost in a crowd. She asked softly, "Miss, do you know where the bus stop is?" I glanced back at the glowing mansion, the sound of laughter spilling out. If my family saw me talking to her, they'd sneer, maybe even drag me back to keep the cameras clean. But something inside me refused to walk past. "You're far from the main road," I told her gently. "Let me walk you there." She leaned on my arm as we moved down the street. Every step we took, I felt lighter, as though I were shedding the weight of the golden cage behind me. When we reached the bus stop, she smiled with surprising warmth. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "Most people don't even look at me." I smiled back. "You matter. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Without thinking, I pulled out my phone and snapped a picture of us together. Her hand in mine, her eyes bright under the streetlight, it felt like a moment worth remembering. I posted it with a simple caption, "Kindness costs nothing." By the time I returned home, the party was winding down. I slipped inside quietly, but my brother Lucas spotted me first. "Where have you been?" His smirk widened when he noticed the phone in my hand. "Oh, of course! Posting another charity stunt?" "What are you talking about?" I asked, but my mother's voice cut through before I could explain. Claire. She held her phone out, the screen glowing with my post already flooded with comments. Why must you always embarrass us? Do you need attention so badly you take pictures with street beggars? Sophie snorted. She thinks she's some saint. It's pathetic. Laughter rolled through them like thunder, each sound a lash across my skin. My cheeks burned, my throat tight. I wanted to defend myself, to shout that kindness wasn't shameful. But the words stuck. I stood frozen, humiliated in the middle of the glittering ballroom, their cruelty echoing louder than the music. Inside, a voice whispered, if they could see beyond their vanity, they'd understand. But they never will. What I didn't know then, standing under the chandeliers with their laughter piercing my ears, was that the photo I had just taken would not fade into the void of the internet. It would become the spark that set everything ablaze. The picture they mocked would return like a boomerang, striking with the force of destiny. The morning after my mother's birthday began with the sound of champagne glasses clinking in the kitchen. I had barely slept. The words street trash still rang in my ears. The photo I'd posted with the lost woman was buried under a tidal wave of comments, half of them kind, half of them cruel. I padded downstairs, hair unbrushed, still in my robe. The party decorations sagged in defeat. Half-deflated balloons, wilting roses, plates with half-eaten cake. My brothers lounged at the marble island, scrolling through their phones. Their suits had been exchanged for sweatpants, but their smirks remained. Look who decided to join us, Adrian said, tossing a grape into his mouth. The saint of the sidewalk. Don't start, I muttered, reaching for the coffee pot. Oh, come on, Claire, Sophie chimed in, her bracelets jingling as she scrolled through her phone. You really thought hugging some random homeless woman and posting it online would make Mom forgive you? That's almost cute. My mother looked up from her mimosa, her lips curving into that same perfect smile she'd worn for the cameras last night. Claire, she said sweetly, you must stop humiliating this family. We've worked far too hard to build a reputation, and you tarnish it every time you seek attention in these undignified ways. Her words landed like blows, each one heavier than the last. I wanted to protest, to remind her of the nights I waited by the door for her to come home and tuck me in, the bedtime stories she never finished because she was always on a plane, always at some gala. But what good would it do? I sipped my coffee instead, the bitterness catching in my throat. The kitchen lights seemed too bright. My siblings laughed again, and the sound wrapped around me like barbed wire. Have you ever been the shadow in your own family photo? I wanted to ask. Have you ever wondered if you were born just to be ignored? The kettle whistled. The room spun with voices and laughter. And then, a vibration in my pocket. I slipped my phone out, expecting another cruel comment, but the message was different. Don't give up. I'm watching. You're not alone. My fingers went cold around the phone. Who? Who would send this? Micro cliffhanger. The screen dimmed, and for a split second before it went dark, I noticed the sender's name, someone I hadn't seen in decades. I couldn't stop staring at that name. My pulse raced as though my heart wanted to tear free. It was impossible. They told me she was gone, that she disappeared without a trace when I was 10. My aunt, who vanished one winter night and was never spoken of again. Evelyn. Everything okay, Claire? Sophie's voice sliced through my trance. She was suddenly at my side, her hand on my shoulder, her eyes soft. Don't let Mom get to you. You know how she is. I searched her face, trying to decide if the kindness there was real. Last night's leaked video had come from her account. She'd sworn it was hacked, that she would never humiliate me. I wanted to believe her. She was my little sister. I had carried her on my back to school when she was too tired to walk, but then my phone buzzed again. Another message from the same number. Be careful who you trust. Blood can cut deeper than knives. My stomach dropped. Meanwhile, the video spread like fire. News anchors played my mother's words on repeat. Hashtags began to trend. Street trash angel. Cancel Morgan Empire. Strangers were defending me, praising me for showing kindness when my own family mocked me. At first, I thought it was a fluke, a spark that would fade. But by evening, reporters were camped outside the mansion gates. My brother's deals began to fall apart. Their investors backed away, afraid of scandal. The perfect Morgan image was cracking, and I was the fisher. "Are you happy now?" my mother hissed at dinner, her diamonds catching the light like shards of ice. "You've destroyed us." I lowered my eyes, my pulse pounding in my ears. Did I? Or did you do this to yourself? I wanted to ask, but I bit my tongue. Twist. After dinner, Sophie slipped into my room. She hugged me tight, whispering, "I'm on your side, Claire. I'll help you get out of here." For a moment, my heart softened. Maybe I wasn't alone after all. Maybe one person in this house still saw me. But then, hours later, when I checked my phone again, I saw it. A private forum post with the exact video of my mother's drunken tirade, uploaded by an account using the same username that had sent me the mysterious text. Micro cliffhanger. I froze, the screen glowing in the dark. Why would she pretend to comfort me, and then stab me in the back? The sun dipped low, painting the street in copper light as I walked home from the grocery store. My arms ached from the bags, but it wasn't the weight of milk and bread that dragged at me. It was the weight of every whispered insult, every cruel laugh that replayed in my head. My family's voices clung to me like a curse. At the corner, I saw her again, the same old woman I'd met before. She stood uncertainly near the curb, her frail hands clutching a worn purse, her eyes darting in confusion. People walked past without slowing. Some frowned at her, others simply ignored her as if she were invisible. "Ma'am, are you lost again?" I asked softly, setting my bags down. Her lips trembled into a smile. "I can't seem to find my way home." "Then let me walk with you." She leaned heavily on my arm, her steps unsteady but determined. Each pace reminded me of guiding my father through the garden when his health failed, years before he died. My chest tightened. I missed him more in that moment than I could bear. We turned into my street just as the first porch lights flickered on. And there, gathered in the driveway of the Morgan estate, stood my family. They were drinking wine, their laughter echoing off the marble pillars, a picture of aristocratic perfection. Until they saw me. Until they saw her. Adrian's glass paused halfway to his mouth. Sophie's eyes widened, then narrowed with disdain. My mother's lips curled into that familiar sneer. "Look at her," Sophie announced loud enough for the neighbors across the street to hear. "Dragging strays home now." Laughter erupted. Adrian added, "Maybe she thinks she's starting a shelter. God knows it's the only thing she's qualified for." My mother stepped forward, her diamonds catching the dying sunlight. She looked the old woman up and down, her nose wrinkling as though at a foul odor. Then her gaze landed on me, sharp as broken glass. "Claire," she said, her voice venom sweetened for the audience. "Do you know what you are? Trash. Street trash. Your life will amount to nothing but digging through garbage." The words sliced through me, but worse than the sting was the chorus of laughter from my siblings. Worse still was the silence of the neighbors, their curious eyes watching but not intervening. I wanted the earth to open and swallow me whole. The old woman squeezed my arm, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't listen." But then, as she adjusted her purse, something slipped from its folds and clattered onto the pavement. A small rectangular card, metal, not plastic. Its surface gleamed with embossed letters, a corporate logo I recognized instantly. Hawthorne Industries, one of the largest tech empires in the country. My breath caught. What was a fragile, wandering old woman doing with something like this? Micro cliffhanger. My fingers closed around the card, and in that instant, I knew the night had just shifted. I had stumbled into a secret that could rip open everything. Later that evening, the humiliation replayed in cruel detail. My family wasted no time broadcasting the incident, telling relatives, friends, and even reporters about my pathetic performance. Adrian posted a photo of me holding the old woman's hand, captioned, "Our Saint Sister, always auditioning for sainthood." The comments burned with mockery. I sat on my bed in the dark, my phone screen a blinding reminder of their cruelty. My chest ached, my hands shook. For a wild moment, I thought about leaving for good, packing what little I had and disappearing. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was nothing. I reached for the closet and pulled out my father's old jacket. The fabric smelled faintly of cedar, though the years had faded everything else. I hugged it close, burying my face in the collar. He was the only one who had ever seen me, the only one who had called me brave. Tears stung, hot and unrelenting. "If you can see me now, Dad, I hope I'm still the daughter you believed in." The house was silent, heavy. My family had gone to their rooms, smug after another public execution of my dignity. I rocked gently, clinging to the jacket, trying to convince myself I could keep going. And then a sound shattered the silence. Engines. Low, powerful, synchronized. I froze, my breath caught in my throat. The vibrations reached my window before the headlights did. I rose slowly, pulling back the curtain. One by one, black SUVs rolled to a stop in front of the estate. 9 of them. Their polished exteriors reflected the streetlights like liquid shadows. The engines cut, doors clicked open in unison. Figures in suits stepped out, silhouettes against the glow of the street lamps. Micro cliffhanger. My pulse thundered. They weren't here for my family. They were here for her, and that meant somehow they were also here for me. The air stilled when the SUV's doors opened. Men in black suits fanned out with precision, their earpieces glinting in the porch light. My family, for once, had nothing clever to say. Their champagne glasses trembled in midair. The old woman straightened her back, no longer frail, no longer lost. Her gaze sharpened, and when she stepped forward, the entire driveway seemed to bow to her presence. "Evelyn Hawthorne," whispered one of the neighbors from across the street. The name sliced through the silence like a blade. My siblings gasped, my mother's face drained of color, her lips parting in disbelief. I blinked hard. Evelyn Hawthorne, the elusive founder of Hawthorne Industries, a woman rumored to have vanished into obscurity years ago, building an empire from the shadows. The same Evelyn whose name had flickered on my phone screen days earlier, and she was standing here, her hand slipping firmly into mine. "I have waited for you," she said softly, but her voice carried with an authority that silenced the entire block. The world parades cruelty in silk gowns and diamond chains. "But kindness," she looked at me, her eyes piercing. "Kindness is rarer than gold." My knees nearly buckled. Behind us, Sophie hissed, "What is happening?" But no one dared interrupt. My mother tried to recover, her fake smile twitching as she stepped forward. "Miss Hawthorne," she said, sugar dripping from her voice. "What an honor. Please, come inside. We'd be delighted." Evelyn raised a hand and the words died on my mother's tongue. Then she turned fully toward me. "Claire, I choose you." The world blurred. Cameras clicked from the sidewalks, neighbors whispering frantically into their phones. My family looked like statues carved from ice, brittle and cracking. Micro cliffhanger. My heart thundered as Evelyn's words echoed. Why me? Why had she chosen me of all people? We sat together later, away from the glaring lights of the driveway. The security team had cleared a quiet corner of the garden. My mother hovered at the window, desperate to eavesdrop, but too afraid to approach. Evelyn poured tea herself, her hands steady despite her age. "Do you know why I was on that street the night you helped me?" she asked. I shook my head. "Because I wanted to see if the world still carried souls like yours. Power isolates, wealth blinds, but true character only shows when you think no one is watching." Her eyes softened. "And you didn't hesitate." Tears burned the back of my eyes. "But I've failed so many times. My own family despises me." "Then you've already learned the first lesson," she said, "to find the strength to stand apart. That is why I'm asking you to work with me. Quietly. The world does not yet need to know you're mine." Her words were both promise and warning. She slid a sleek black folder across the table. Inside were documents outlining a global foundation, projects in war-torn countries, scholarships for children, initiatives to fight hunger, and at the center, my name, penciled in under strategic advisor. "Keep this hidden for now," she said firmly. "Not everyone will want to see you succeed, especially not those closest to you." A shiver traced down my spine. That night, I began my quiet rebellion. I started recording conversations at home, noting every instance of cruelty. I copied financial records I found lying carelessly on Adrian's desk, proof of their schemes. For the first time, I wasn't powerless. I was building a case, but paranoia stalked me. Some nights I swore I heard footsteps outside my door. My phone buzzed with strange notifications. Then, one evening, I found a tiny black lens hidden behind the books on my shelf. My breath froze. My younger brother Lucas. He had always been tech-savvy, obsessed with surveillance gadgets. My mind raced. How long had he been watching me? I smashed the device, but the dread lingered. If he'd planted one, there were probably more. Every whisper with Evelyn, every file I stored, every tear I shed could already be in his hands. Twist. Days later, my fears proved true. While scrolling through encrypted forums Evelyn had shown me, I stumbled upon it. A clip of me, sitting on my bed in the dark, whispering into my phone about my plan to leave. Uploaded to the dark web. Thousands of strangers could now watch my most vulnerable moment. Micro cliffhanger. My stomach lurched as the screen glowed with my own trembling image. Who else had seen it? And worse, who else was pulling the strings behind my brother's betrayal? Evelyn never did anything halfway. When she moved like an earthquake. The morning her face appeared on national television, declaring herself alive, well, and standing proudly beside me, the world gasped. "This is Claire Morgan," she told the cameras, her arm draped over my shoulders. When no one else would see me, she did. When the world dismissed me as useless, she showed me kindness. This woman saved me, though she had nothing to gain. Every outlet replayed the clip. Hashtags spread like wildfire. Street trash angel, Dr. Morgan hypocrisy, da kindness wins. My phone buzzed endlessly with messages from strangers, praising me, defending me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I was seen. The shift was immediate. Reporters camped outside the estate gates no longer wanted to photograph Adrian's car or Sophie's gowns. They wanted me. They shouted my name, begged for interviews. And my family. Oh, they seethed. At dinner, my mother's fork clattered against her plate. "This is your doing," she hissed. "You've humiliated us, but you won't have the last word." Adrian leaned back, trying to act calm, but the vein in his temple pulsed. "She won't get away with it." "We'll find her weakness." What they didn't know was that their weakness had already been exposed. Evelyn called me into her study later that night, her eyes gleaming with quiet fire. "It's time," she said. "They've built their empire on sand. I've already bought the ground beneath them." My heart stuttered. She opened a folder thick with deeds and contracts. The Morgan fortune, their investments, their real estate. Piece by piece I acquired it. Legally. Quietly. They thought they owned everything. They own nothing. The world tilted. The dynasty that had mocked me my entire life was already hollowed out from within. Micro cliffhanger. They were about to lose everything, yet Evelyn warned me. My family still had one card left to play. The storm broke fast. My mother marched into a press conference uninvited, cameras flashing as she raised her manicured hand. "My daughter," she began, her voice cracking with false emotion, "is manipulating Evelyn Hawthorne. She has always been desperate for attention. And now she's exploiting an old woman's generosity for her own gain." Her words twisted like knives. I stood in the wings, fists clenched, as reporters turned their lenses on Evelyn. For a flicker, doubt shadowed their faces. What if she was right? What if I was nothing but an opportunist? But Evelyn was ready. Calmly, she raised a remote and pressed play. A massive screen behind her lit up, playing videos, grainy at first, then sharp. Footage of my family at home, my mother's voice calling me worthless, Adrian mocking me, Sophie laughing as I cried. Years of cruelty condensed into minutes. Gasps filled the room. Reporters scribbled furiously. Some covered their mouths in horror. Twist 5. Evelyn hadn't just gathered evidence. She had been watching all along, documenting everything. Proof undeniable. The Morgans crumbled in real time. My siblings turned on one another immediately. "It was Adrian's fault," Sophie shouted into a microphone. "He told me to laugh," Adrian roared back. "Don't you dare blame me. You enjoyed it more than anyone." Lucas, red-faced, tried to storm off stage, but reporters blocked his path, firing questions about the surveillance devices he'd planted in my room. My mother's carefully curated mask cracked entirely. Her voice rose to a shriek. "You're all ungrateful. I made this family. Without me, you are nothing." The cameras captured every second, and the world watched the Morgans implode. I stood at the edge of the chaos, my heart pounding not with fear this time, but with release. Decades of humiliation, of silence, of being the forgotten daughter. It was all unraveling before my eyes. The dynasty that had crushed me was choking on its own poison. Micro cliffhanger. For the first time in years, I felt my lips curve. Surrounded by ruin, I smiled. The headlines spread like fire. Morgan dynasty crumbles. Street trash angel vindicated. Overnight, my family became a national cautionary tale, their perfect facade reduced to ash. Brands pulled sponsorships, investors severed ties, and the once celebrated Morgan name became synonymous with cruelty. For the first time, the world saw me not as the invisible daughter, but as the survivor. Yet victory tasted strange. In the quiet that followed the storm, I found myself on a deserted beach at dawn. The ocean stretched endlessly, waves crashing in a rhythm that felt older than grief. I sat on the damp sand, pulling my father's jacket tight around me, the salty wind stinging my eyes. Tears came unbidden, sliding hot against my cheeks. Not for them, not for the family that broke me, but for the years I had lost trying to be loved by people incapable of love. I closed my eyes and whispered to the tide, "Dad, I made it. I wish you could see me now." When I opened them, Evelyn was standing behind me. Her figure was framed by the rising sun, her face softened by the golden light. She lowered herself onto the sand beside me without a word, letting the silence stretch. Then she reached into her bag and drew out an envelope, heavy with something that clinked faintly. "This is yours," she said, pressing it into my hands. Inside lay a deed and several documents stamped with legal seals. My breath caught as I read. The numbers blurred before my eyes, incomprehensible in their magnitude. "You are my heir, Claire," Evelyn said simply, "not because of blood, but because of choice. My fortune will one day be yours." I stared at her, the weight of billions pressing into my chest. "Why me?" "Because you never asked for anything. Because you gave when you had nothing. Power in the wrong hands corrupts. But in yours—" She touched my shoulder. It could heal. My mind whirled. I could rebuild everything they had stolen from me. I could wield the kind of power my family had worshipped all their lives. The temptation surged like fire, but Evelyn's gaze held mine steady, as if she knew the storm inside me. Micro cliffhanger. I stood at the edge of a choice: embrace the empire of wealth or forge a path of humanity. The decision crystallized in the weeks that followed. I declined the glimmering penthouses Evelyn offered, choosing instead a modest home near the city's heart. From there, I built something new, not for cameras, not for prestige, but for the ones the world ignored. With Evelyn's guidance, I established a foundation dedicated to the overlooked: children abandoned by the system, veterans forgotten in alleys, families stripped bare by injustice. Reporters tried to frame me as a rising mogul, but I resisted. I am not here to build another empire, I told them. I am here to build bridges. Slowly, a different kind of family gathered around me. Volunteers, activists, strangers who became friends. We laughed around kitchen tables, shared stories of survival, healed wounds together. I had found what my birth family could never give, a circle where love wasn't conditional, where worth wasn't measured in gold. Meanwhile, the Morgans collapsed. Adrian filed for bankruptcy. Sophie fled abroad chasing faded glory. Lucas disappeared into lawsuits over his surveillance schemes. My mother clung to scraps of dignity, but her voice carried no weight anymore. Their house, once a palace, was auctioned off. They were left with nothing but the ghosts of their pride. One evening, as I stood before a crowd at the Foundation's first gala, I saw flashes of the past. My mother's sneer, my siblings' laughter, the nights I cried alone. But those ghosts no longer haunted me. They fueled me. I lifted my glass, not in vengeance, but in gratitude. Kindness saved me when cruelty tried to break me. Tonight, let us promise to save others the same way. Applause thundered, not the hollow applause of false friends, but the sound of hearts aligning. And in that moment, I understood. Revenge had never been the destination. Freedom was. At dawn the next day, I walked barefoot along the same beach, the horizon burning with light. Evelyn's words echoed in my mind, but now they blended with my own. The greatest revenge is not in defeating those who hurt you, I whispered into the wind. It's in becoming yourself, fully, without chains. The waves surged forward, erasing my footprints, and I stepped into the sunrise, not as the forgotten daughter, not as the victim, but as Claire Morgan, reborn.